Why do most businesses fail? Well, today I'm going to tell you why most businesses fail from my experience. Um, the first one I would say is lack of intention. I'm just go over really where my lack of intention was when I first started my first business. And technically my first business was when I was selling candy in middle school. If you know, you know. If you was selling candy in middle school, if you wasn't, you was missing out. But I would say my first real business was I was selling clothes when I got to high school by the name of Rich Ambitions. For my OGs out there, they know. If you know, you know. But yeah, my lack of intention. I jumped into the business, and at the time, I was just jumping into a trend. Honestly, this was like around COVID time, like a little bit like right before COVID. I just jumped into a trend, and I had never started a business, and my lack of intention started right at that moment. I just seen on TikTok on how clothing brands was big right now, something that was growing. It wasn't as big as it was like right now and like post COVID, because like post COVID and like from that time, they just like surged and it was just like crazy. And the mistake was, I seen on there, I was like, I like clothes. I wear clothes every day. I should start a business on it. Now, not to say that I was wrong, but I wasn't necessarily as right. But the thing is, I can say to this day, looking hindsight 2020, I really feel like it was God telling me to start. Because like as I was growing up, my mother always told me, I can't remember the phrase, man. But it's basically saying like go out and make your own money and don't always have to depend on another man to make that money. Like go out and start a business basically. But the thing was she never told me what to start, and I got threw into the water and see if I could swim. And I can say I can paddle right now. But yeah, I jumped into it, and immediately as soon as I jumped into it, I went and bought supplies, man. I went and bought an iPad at that time. It was like right before, it was right after Christmas. I used all my Christmas money. I still have the iPad to this day. The iPad got some miles on it. Still worked perfectly fine. But I went and bought an iPad. I went and I had a Cricut. I started off with a Cricut. If you know, you know. If you know about weaving and heat pressing, when that is real blood, sweat, and tears, man. I'm going to tell you right now, that is real blood, sweat, and tears. But I went and bought supplies. This is fast forward, obviously, for the sake of the video. But I went and bought blanks. I went and bought a lot of stuff, not knowing why I bought it, what it was for. Just knowing somebody on TikTok and somebody on Instagram and YouTube was like, yes, I'm going to need this when I'm starting my brand. And I spent days and hours, like I spent a lot of time learning how to at least have a foundation of starting a clothing brand and having clothes and how to design it on Procreate. I used Procreate at the time before I went later like into like having manufacturers and having designers and everything. And like I said, I had no idea what I was doing. At that time I didn't know like what I was doing was right or wrong. I couldn't measure nothing. I couldn't say that I should stop doing this or I shouldn't stop doing this. I was just, even when it came to marketing, my first drop, man, like I was just posting content and just following based off what TikTok and Instagram said and YouTube. And my first drop, man, it flopped. I will never forget. I posted the day that the jackets were live. It was a black jacket. And I was just refreshing my page. I think I did pre-orders. I didn't get no pre-orders, but on drop day I got like 3 orders. And I was just refreshing my page. And that day I only got 3 orders. And looking back on that, I don't regret nothing. Even though I didn't know what I was doing, I don't regret nothing. Cause I remember like that moment. I still remember my last customer, Michael Burney. I think he was one of my last customers that I dropped my hoodie off to. If you're watching this, bro, I appreciate you. But it was my last customer I dropped off to, and I was just trying to keep as most gratitude. And I was still happy though, like, cause I got 3 sales. But let's get back to the point. It was the lack of intention that I spent so much money even the time too. Sometimes I personally feel like the lack of intention with it. I don't want to necessarily say the business flopped, but it taught me a lot. But I say that's the upside to it because I learned along the way. I learned what not to do. I learned how to do it. I was able not to make these mistakes again. And the funny thing about that is, I can say that starting muscle I had, like that point of action to start something and just learn on the way to do it. I don't know how it was so strong then, because right now I'm not gonna cap. It's pretty weak right now. Um, but yeah, that lack of intention did have an upside because once I was able to reflect and I get older, I was able to understand, hey, maybe I shouldn't have do this, or maybe I shouldn't take this same trait into doing something else. Um, Second reason, lack of strategy. And looking back on it, even as I'm progressing, as I'm getting older, I'm in college and X, Y, and Z, and trying to build stuff out like this and YouTube and everything. Having strategy or having frameworks. For me, having frameworks and reasoning behind a lot of things that you do, it helps with progression. It helps with tracking. It helps with, for me, it keeps me organized. Like when it comes to my to-do list or like my daily calendar, even a calendar, for example, that's strategy because you're organizing how you plan to spend the rest of your day. Having strategy behind different things. What is the goal? Um, how you want to make money? Um, Not taking into account like your operational costs, like me driving, the Cash App transactions, the Apple fee transactions. Cause I ain't gonna cap. Once I got paid, that jump was going straight into my account. It was going straight into my account, and I was transferring it over there. But me not having the strategy behind me, like how I was gonna save money, how I was gonna use that money, how the money is gonna make money on itself, like how I was gonna use this money to budget it for marketing, having a strategy, like a whole business model, having a frame for that. I lack that, and I lack that knowledge behind that. And like I said, it's still everything that I'm saying right now as far as like why most businesses fail and why I fail. It's the upside to that. I would like to say a lot of the things that everything always has a good side and a bad side. There's always two sides to a piece of bread. There's always heads and tails on a coin. There's always two sides to it. It just depends on your perception and how you see it. And not having that strategy, I would say, is the reason probably why I am how I am today. Like when it comes to strategy, I want to know like the framework behind it. I want to try to develop a framework behind it, even though sometimes it don't work. But I want to simplify something down to as little as possible to try to understand what's the core point. Like let's get all this fluff out the way and let's have a whole strategy behind what we're doing, why we're doing it, in the most simplified and digestible point. Because I feel like a lot of times either we just don't have a strategy or we're just overcomplicating the strategy rather than looking at something from the core problem and the core solution of what we are trying to provide. And yes, that was a big one. But the biggest one, I would say number 3, I would say the misunderstanding value. That is something I did not learn until I got to college. And even when I was studying through like entrepreneurship some more and like through mentors, I would say defining value is what people are willing to give up in exchange of what you're providing. And honestly, I was low-key building my business as a commodity business. So many people started a clothing brand back then. I was just competing on price because I didn't know how price worked. I didn't know how competition worked. Didn't know how to build like no SWOT analysis. I didn't know how to build no competitor analysis. I didn't know what nobody else was doing. I was like, oh, they're pricing this at that. I want to make a little small. I want to make a profit on this. I'm going to price it here. But the problem with that was since I had no knowledge on having a business, I was competing on price. Like I would see people when they were dropping their clothes and they're dropping their items, they would have so many orders, but that's because their prices was low. And I felt bad about charging for my product because people would complain about it. So I started to lower my prices so I get more sales, which felt good at the moment, short term, but long term, when I'm looking at my account, I'm looking at like, dang, bro, like I didn't make no money off this drop. I didn't make no money off that sale. And it hurt because like I said, I was building my business on commodity. And if I didn't, a commodity basically, when you're competing on things that don't really drive the business, so it's like what price drives the business, but you're competing on feelings. You're competing on things that's going to harm your business, feelings, your price. And as somebody else lower their prices, if you lower your prices as well, you're competing on commodity, and that's just a race to the bottom. And nobody wins there. And you will see like a lot of businesses when it comes to commodity, that's more things like fixed items, like like these sticky notes. Like it's a fixed item. Like I can't really compete with nobody on those sticky note prices because someone is going the competitor who has been established here is going to keep they can go as low as they want, or somebody is just going to purchase a sticky note that's most convenient for them. Like who cares about a brand of sticky notes? As I was saying though, like I was not competing on value. I was competing on looks. I was competing on feelings versus what really actually matters. And like for example, when you think of like expensive brands and other businesses, things like for the brands like Rolls Royce, you got cars like Rolls Royce, clothes like Prada, you got BMW, or you got these high value brands and these high value businesses. When you think about the value you get from there, you're getting exclusivity. You're getting this, or like cologne, you're getting this. In the case of like, I got this, you don't got this, so I feel better than you, and that's the value that we're doing that. But stuff like this only works when you're targeting the right customers. The value that you value directly correlates to who you're targeting and how much that person is willing to spend with you. Most of us target customers thinking it's going to fit into business and to make you feel better about yourself, but it's going to hurt the business in the long run. And honestly, you can build a business as far as having high volume, low profit, or low prices. There's nothing wrong with that. Walmart does that. But at the end of the day, that's a personal opinion. That is a choice on you. But it's going to directly affect on how much value you can bring to the customer. Like you can't have high volume, low prices, but you're trying to have a luxury clothing brand. You're trying to have a luxury experience. Like it's going to be very hard to do that when you're running on your margins on your product. So like having the right customer to fulfill the value that you're providing and that you want the value that they can provide back to you is very important. And I misunderstood the concept of value, and I misunderstood the concept of targeting the right customer, being in the right market, and really how to target them and provide the right amount of value to them, so therefore my business grows and then they grow at the same time. We're all one big happy family. But those are the three things that I see businesses fail from my experience with running my first business and trying to help others recognize those patterns and recognize those things and fix them and go back and help them with that. Recap. I'll forgot myself. Intention, strategy, and the misunderstanding value. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.